woman, I think, has huge certainty about what she's doing. And so I think does Diana, although Diana, I think, is slightly hamstrung by, you know, her, I think by her daughter. And, you know,
it's interesting, even you as the author there were speculating, you know, because if anyone should know, for heaven's sake,
no, it's great fun.
it should be you. So obviously, in a way, you have given these characters a life which, in fact, invites this sort of, you know, even from you, their very creator interpretation, which I find, you know, fascinating. What about Matilda? See, I think that's a wonderful thing in Scold's Bridal. You know, is she the archetypal bitch, or is she really the charmer, or is, in fact, isn't she both, depending on to whom she is relating and to whom she's speaking, etc.
But you see, if I say to you that actually Matilda is one of my favourite characters, and I said this to somebody the other day, and they said, oh, she's awful. She's quite horrible.
She's fascinating.
Yes, and I said, but I personally am very fond of Matilda. And it comes back to this we were saying earlier, is that readers will interpret in the way that they choose. I mean, we all do. That's how it works. And I think for me, I mean, I can say to you absolutely without, you know, a shadow of a doubt, I like Matilda. I think Matilda is a very wronged woman. I think she's funny. I think she's kind in many respects. But I also think she can be an incredible bitch.
True.
But I think her bitchiness is there for a reason, or has developed for a reason. And so, you know, yes, she's both. She's angel and devil.
True. Yeah. And is she also victim and, as we have rehearsed, agente provocateuse? Minette and I being French pickies here. But truly, I mean, she's almost like victim and perp, you know, in the same context.
Yes.
And then that takes one to Olive, who I think in many ways is the most difficult character, because you get her through all these different screens, different filters of how people want to perceive her, and you think, okay, right, here she is, she's walking out of prison, we have this down, and at the very last minute, you know, you give her this kind of, maybe she got away with manipulating everybody after all, and you really don't know.
No. Well, I don't
whether,
either.
obviously. That's a good question. But so that real certainty, that real resolution that may be a source of satisfaction for some readers is in fact deliberately missing, isn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely, because you see, the other thing I feel quite strongly about, certainly as far as my book's concerned, is that when you or anybody embarks on this journey with me, which is what it is, this journey into an imaginary world, where a violent death is the focus for tension for the story. It releases the emotions of the characters who are still alive. And when we embark on this journey together, I expect the reader to work as hard at the characters I've created as I've worked at them. And it's what you have to do in real life. And as you work at a friendship, you will never find out truly what that person is like. And often, you can be friends with somebody for years and years and years, and you still don't know what they're like. And so, in a sense, I'm trying to reflect that in what I do.
You do that really well, since we might mention it just at the end in your new book, The Echo. It's such bad form to actually discuss the new book, because we're going to give it all away and prevent people from buying and enjoying it. But I do think that you've carried a lot of these ideas forward in The Echo, which was a book I tremendously enjoyed. She did briefly say, which we can't go into, I'm afraid, that you do talk about the ethics of police and about abuse, or particularly sexual abuse of children, as recurring themes in your books, which I do think that you are really a one who likes to explore society and social issues, and that the mystery is a way of going about that. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Oh yes, because I think the thing is, although I keep saying this is fantasy, it's because it's fiction, it's fantasy. At the same time, you have to root it in something. And so I do tend to use, I mean, for example, in the new book, it's sort of homelessness is the background to what I'm writing about. And when you come back to, say, the child abuse thing, which, yes, I've visited at least twice, I think, in fact 3 times, because in The Sculptress as well. But you see, it's what I said earlier, you cannot have murder happening out of nowhere. There has to be a history of dysfunction within a group of people, and I usually write about families, for the anger and the dislike, or whatever the mainspring emotion is that causes the murder. It has to be there, and that's what I write about.
I think it's certainly fair then to perhaps conclude that the traditional mystery, the form, the basic plot puzzle, whatever you want to call it, is capable of moving on to become a vehicle for exploration. It doesn't have to let form stifle content. It can, in fact, be a tool rather than an obstacle. It's also interesting that I think there are more commonalities between the British and the U.S. mystery than there are substantial differences.
I think you're right there.
And in fact, crime is a universal, and perhaps ultimately that's why so many Americans enjoy British crime fiction, and perhaps why British readers do read American crime fiction. It is a common voice as well as a different voice in a common society. Minette, what would be your view on that?
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, I think what fascinates me is it's worldwide. So it travels right around the world, Japan, Australia, Germany, all huge buyers and readers of crime fiction, and of American and English. So they go down very, very well indeed. Aren't we lucky to be in that genre?
Absolutely. It's a global community. I find that the crime world is, in fact, a community in its best sense of the word. And it is definitely a global one, and moving more so, I think, with electrical technology. And, you know, you're here, for example, as an object of that. So may I thank you very much for coming and sharing your views this afternoon with us.
Barbara, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode in our criminal calendar.